So do you think they're going to have a Black Friday sale for Dragonflight?
No.
Why not?
Well, I guess maybe.
Well, it comes out on the Dragonflight comes out on the 28th.
When is Black Friday? Hang on, when is that?
Well, the Black Friday is like the 20.
It's November 25th.
Yeah.
Nah, no way.
You don't think they're gonna have a Black Friday sale?
That's my prediction. Yeah.
Why not?
Because it's new. They want to get full value, full money on it.
Okay,
next year.
Sure. Okay. So apparently next year there will be a Black Friday sale.
That's my prediction. I don't know. You just threw this at me, but I think that's what I think they'll do.
So basically, we got a lot of news this week in regards to stuff that's coming in World of Warcraft. Chief among them, Dragonflight launch date, November 28th. That's the date that everything is going down. In addition to that, we got a lot of different stuff to talk about, including but not limited to the raid release schedule, which, for those who don't know, all 3 difficulties of the raid, normal, heroic, and mythic, will be open on December 12th. How are you feeling initially about that?
Well, the week of December 12th, so December 13th in NA, December 14th in EU.
Okay.
Is I think how that will work. Yeah. The fact that all 3 are coming out at the same time, it seems kind of cool. Personally, I'm very worried about my time during, like, it's going to make any hour you can spend playing World of Warcraft, if you're a high-end player, extremely valuable starting on December 13th or 14th, depending on which region you're on, going forward. Every hour that you are spending doing something silly like sleeping or eating or working out or whatever needs to be cut and needs to be put into playing World of Warcraft in order to get as much items as possible, I think, with all 3 coming out at the same time. Because previously, there was that heroic week where like clearing heroic, doing some M+, getting some of the items, like getting good items, was something that you could do, but there was like a cap on how good your time could be during heroic week, right?
Yeah.
And now with all of them coming out at the same time, that cap doesn't exist. So I'm a little bit worried personally, because it's a very busy time for me, but I think it's an exciting thing to try, and I think it's a good time to run this experiment, although I do think for me it's going to be worse.
I will say right here too, like you kind of alluded to it, Mythic Plus and PvP Season 1 will begin the week of December 12th, and with regional maintenance for Dragonflight, the item level rewards from completing Mythic Plus runs will not be capped on the first week as well. And so previously they were capped at like 7 or like 10 or whatever whenever you're doing dungeons.
Yeah, it was usually +6s. You couldn't get better gear than a +6 gear or something, but it depended on the season. Notably, they haven't said anything about Valor here, so you might be able to get end of run being high, but you may still need to wait a certain amount of weeks to get enough Valor to bring them all the way up to, halfway between heroic and mythic eye level.
My initial impression, and it's going to really depend on how it feels to play, is like this is a lot of stuff that is coming out the first week, and I worry that it's going to feel overbearing. So I know that like for my guild, generally this is only going to realistically affect mythic level progression guilds, any level of like general mythic rating guild. It's going to affect them by far the most. And I don't even necessarily believe that it affects lower end guilds, although it may in like some minor capacity. It's going to feel very strange knowing that like you have to go and prog heroic and probably normal first and foremost before you're able to even go into mythic. And so there's some level of like how much like worth is my time. In addition to that, like you said, doing a lot of mythic plus outside of doing a lot of Mythic Plus runs outside of Raid is going to be very important for people who are just going to be raiding, and just because the gear is uncapped. Whereas previously it was less important and you would kind of gradually ramp up your gear. Now you're able to get a lot of gear in a very fast time span. Because in addition to that, you're going to be going into the raid with like M0 level gear. And so anything that you're getting from Mythic Plus is a massive upgrade. Same with even normal gear, where in not a lot of situations, but a decent number of situations, you're going into that tier with something equivalent to normal. You're going to be able to get like massive upgrades even from normal. So doing a lot of content early is going to be incredibly important.
Yeah. Depending on a couple different factors, like what item level can you get from M+? That's something we still don't know the answer to. If that answer is like fairly high, then maybe the week of December 12th is actually just 3 days of M+ spamming until you have Abyss M+ gear set, and then going into Heroic, and then like normal for tier. That might be the like most optimal way to spend that time early. I don't know.
RWF is going to open up with splits again.
Yeah, Race to World First is going to begin with several days probably of gear farming being, which the old Race to World First used to be, there used to be a heroic week with a lot of gear farming, but that was off broadcast. Now there's going to be less total time spent because the time going into Mythic is, obviously the opportunity cost is high, but that's going to be moved into the broadcast part. So do expect to see more days of splits and gear farming on the Race to World First is my opinion, expectation there.
And again, we don't know anything about Valor. I have a suspicion it's probably going to be capped, but there's been nothing.
Probably.
I think that there's supposed to be an M+ post in the next couple of weeks that's going to clarify some stuff. So I'm really interested to see what that shows up. There's been a lot of clarifications on a decent amount of stuff, including but not limited to group loot. And just clarifications on how group loot will function. And I've seen a lot of discourse surrounding how group loot is going to come back. Basically, what it is like, it's the need before greed thing that you may see whenever if you're watching like classic streams. It's like a UI that's similar to what you see on screen here, where that top roll thing is a need button. It's greed and then disenchant, and you're able to roll on loot that you are able to get.
Can we just appreciate this old? That you can tell this is like an old screenshot that was somebody took because like 4 of the same item dropped, but you can see like the old X Pearl unit frames back behind those as well.
Oh my
so
gosh.
This is a piece of history that we're looking at right here.
Relic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they talked about group loot coming back, and they said that this is going to be the only loot type. You're not able to swap it. And then there was a massive clarification post, which I think cleared up a lot of interesting points for players. And they added a decent number of restrictions to the Need Before Greed system just in general to make sure that it's more accessible for players. And the first thing, you can never need for anything your class cannot wear. No warriors can snipe cloth robes with a need roll and then give it away or troll. I think that's like one of the biggest issues and complaints that people were worried about. Is like, okay, like what about people trolling my runs with this Need Before Greed system?
Yeah, and then there's a hidden main spec, off spec functionality as well. So when you can click on need for a shield if you're a Fury warrior and you're loot spec Fury, but if somebody who can actually use a shield and loot spec use a shield clicks need, they will have priority over you and they will get the item before you do if they click need. So that is an extra thing that you won't see in the UI. Like you just click need either way, but it does make loot spec an important thing to make sure you have the right loot spec on. It doesn't look at the spec you're playing, so you can heal a raid with your off spec and still get loot for your ret main spec if you want. Does create a bit of an incentive to change your loot spec to whatever drops the most items from a certain boss and roll need on as many of them that drop if you're trying to be super greedy. But I think in general, this is a good functionality for the thing to have.
So a couple other things is you're not able to roll on a piece of gear if you're wearing the exact same piece at the exact same item level. However, if they do have a tertiary stat or a socket on that piece, you are going to be able to roll, as those are likely going to be upgrades. In addition to that, even after winning the roll, items remain fully tradable without restrictions to players. So that way, guild groups are able to kind of pseudo master loot this stuff.
Guild groups, like we'll probably have an add-on that just 19 people will pass and one person will need, and
yes,
it'll be done exactly like Master Loot for a guild that everybody opts into that. But you can't ever be forced into that. You always get the opportunity to click need if you want. This exact piece at exact item level restriction makes sense because I think people would get very salty if people were winning exact items they already had. It's worth noting though that it says exact, so you could presumably roll on lower item level piece, like lower eye level of the exact same piece.
Yeah,
which I think is fine as well because sometimes people do runs because they want transmog, right? They're mythic geared, they run normal because they want normal mog. Seems like as good a reason as any to, you contributed 1/20th to the boss dying. You should get your 1 in 20 roll at the item.
So I think that overall, like a lot of the systems behind the scenes that is going to work into this group loot system are definitely going to improve it for the players. I've seen some people saying that they prefer personal loot. I don't. Do you understand the argument? Because I don't fully get it. And I feel like I don't want to misrepresent the argument. What exactly is the argument for personal loot?
There's two big genres of reasonable argument, and then there's a lot of made up stuff.
Okay.
One of the ones that's reasonable that makes a lot of sense is like this creates a huge incentive towards having not too many people of the same loot type, right, in a group. For instance, if you're a rogue and you join a raid that has 3 rogues versus joining a raid that has 0 rogues, you have 25% of your chance of getting the dagger that drops, right? The Agi dagger, hunters with bows, that kind of thing. In general, just armor type as well. So this creates a bit of a thing of like, you really want to join a raid that has very few people that can use the items you want. And that might be something that's unfun to do, especially unfun to try and like pug hop to try and get. It also, on the converse side, it means if you're running a raid and you don't have any hunters, or you have one hunter that already has the bow, and a boss drops a bow, that's an item that just poof, right?
Is dead.
That boss just didn't drop an item, right? And
that's
that's
no different than personal loot, though, right?
It is different from personal loot. In personal loot, in personal loot, you could have like the same bow drop for that hunter that already had it. So
yeah.
But like if you are a guild that happens to not have like a hunter or a rogue in particular, or a demon hunter, right? Like warglaive, dagger, bow, a certain armor type. Like if you're imbalanced on that, it's actually, it may be a moderate to heavy penalty to how much loot you get. The other flip side, the other argument that people make is friends acting as like a cabal, rolling need, trading items to one person. I think that is largely an overstated fear. First off, in order for them to have a role that can compete with your role, they need to be the correct loot spec for that item. So it's not like you could have like 4 people each rolling need and then trading items to whichever of them can use it, unless they're all plate wearers or whatever. In which case, it's 4 plate wearers rolling on plate. You should expect that they're all going to be rolling need on plate. And if you're a plate wearer joining that group, you still have your 1 in 5 chance at it. It's true that they can be rolling need on items they don't actually need and trying to trade it to their friends that might have it. But to me, that doesn't seem like a huge leak in the system, or hugely different than somebody joining a personal loot raid and whenever they get an item they don't need, trading it to their friends instead of doing an open roll on it, which is very standard procedure.
I think that this makes sense. Overall, even with the arguments that you present, I feel like this group loot situation is at least slightly better. I think that it's very similar for most people, most players in most situations. And then for the players that it's better for, generally like guild groups and stuff like that, it's going to be a decent amount better to be able to trade loot around. The alternative could have been like fully tradable personal loot.
Yeah, one other type of player that may be worse off here is the kind of silent person who cares about loot in a guild. Say you're in a raiding guild, but you really like to M+, and you're a healer or a tank, and you're in like a high-end raiding guild. With personal loot, if you got an item that was untradeable, you got to keep that item, right? Okay. With this system, if you are a tank, you will not be seeing any of the items, like in a high-end raiding guild, you will not be seeing any of the items that drop for you until long after the tier is done. If you are somebody that's like in that guild because you care about loot and you're trying to get loot for M+, that is bad news for that sort of player. It's a fairly small range of guilds, hopefully, that will be playing that way with their loot, but that does go down somewhat in the world rankings. There will be some guilds that are doing that, and that
by the way,
the stuff.
I will say though that one of the big things, and one of the things that I think is very important, is the fact that it's only one system of loot. I do not think that they should have like options for multiple systems of loot. I think that the fact that they're being like, all right, this is the only system of loot that you're going to have, is the correct way of going about this kind of thing for raid loot specifically. Because if you had to either make a decision on which type of loot you're going to be getting in your group, that was going to cause animosity between players. In addition to that, like it should just be forced one way or the other. It shouldn't be just an option.
Yeah, I do think that it is good that you only can do like it's not like pug leaders choosing which system to use, because I actually do worry that would be like pretty painful. I think that LFR should probably still be personal loot. They said LFR was going to be group loot. I think LFR should just be personal.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I guess it would make sense if LFR is personal loot, but at the same point, if it's
it seems like queuing LFR and then re-queuing over and over again until you get one with no other hunters in it is a really toxic thing to be good.
Okay, let's talk about one of the biggest reasons that this has happened is because of the creation catalyst and tier sets returning again. And so we're not really going to cover tier sets. Just know that you can check down the description. All of the tier sets are out here, and like you can go check on Wowhead and go look at what tier set your class is going to be having come the next.
You don't want to read the Feral Druid one? It's really cool.
Some Feral Druids are crying, and they'll find it later. There's a couple of very interesting posts or parts of that tier set bonus post that I think that we should cover, though, in regards to like big news. And one of the biggest things is about the creation catalyst being renamed to the inspiration catalyst now, and so what it's actually going to be looking like. And I think that just the general philosophies behind what they're going to be doing with the creation catalyst come Dragonflight is something that's actually super important. I commend Blizzard for giving a lot of feedback and explaining their thought process on a decent amount of things, even if they know it's probably going to cause conflict in the community. So now with that said, what Blizzard stated is that new and returning players catch up should not have a monumental task to become ready to fight alongside friends. I agree with this. WoW can confidently carry the system forward as an evergreen feature for players to learn and understand intuitively. And we think that these goals were met, and while there's room for improvement, both understanding the means by which the changes occur, as well as tuning prohibitive currency costs for alts. By the way, the currency cost for alt thing was bad. The fact that they noted that is really good. We're happy to say that the Catalyst will return to the Isles as a companion system for class sets for the foreseeable future. We'll have more details to share, everything Catalyst related in a future update, but for now, it's worth mentioning that we're planning on keeping the unlock cadence the same. That is to say, after the 6 week after Mythic Raid becomes available in Dragonflight Season 1, the Catalyst will unlock. I've already seen a lot of people talking about this. I think that there's a lot of differing opinions on the system. Obviously, I think that you and I have gone on record before to state that we thought that this was fine, but it seems like a lot of players disagree.
Yeah, so people want the Catalyst to do something that it currently isn't in those stated goals,
Yes.
right? They want the Catalyst. There's a large group of people that want the Catalyst to make it so you don't have to raid to get your tier, and also to make it so that you get your tier guaranteed early in the patch. And by doing the week 6 thing, it doesn't meet those goals. Those aren't goals that the Catalyst. They're not the stated goals of the Catalyst. I think the Catalyst as is does a good job of doing the goals that it has stated. I'm torn on whether it would be better if they tried to go for those other goals as well. The other things that they're not trying to accomplish with it. Certainly, if they were, obviously week 1 would be best for that.
My general thought process is like, what if tier didn't come from the vault or come from raid, and instead it only came from the Catalyst? Like, how much better? Because like that would give basically everybody an even playing field. It's not like the 8th week of the patch or the 6th week after Mythic Raid becomes available is like really that late into like a 30-week patch or something like that, if you really look at it on that front. But it's something that players, whenever they are in that 4 weeks or whatever, that 3 weeks that some players who are raiding heavily have their 4 set and they don't, it just feels super bad for them. And so I do wonder if something about the system should change. Personally, as a player myself, I've viewed this as mostly fine, and I think it encourages players to jump into the raid. You're also able to get it from the vault. You're able to get it from the Catalyst if you are like not trying to interact with the raid system. But at the same point, there are a lot of people who just do not want to raid at all, and any time getting behind the Catalyst is too much for them.
Yeah, I definitely empathize with not being powerful because you weren't raiding, and like it's tough because if you want tier drops to be an exciting thing that you're like, oh my god, tier drop from this boss, it's my token, I won the role, or it's my token, I got loot mastered it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like if you want that to be an exciting moment, you can't just have the tier be something that's guaranteed and deterministic, right? Those two goals are not compatible with each other. On the other hand, winning a role for tier and having tier be exciting, in my opinion, is also incompatible with the set bonuses being super duper boring. So I don't know. I could see it going both ways.
It's really tough. It's a really tough decision for Blizzard to make. I think that this is, in my opinion, this is fine. Obviously, players are always going to have pushback. I think that, again, Blizzard giving at least their thought process behind the Creation Catalyst returning and all of the stuff involving it is... I mean, we've been moving in a better direction with communication just as a general rule from Blizzard. In addition to that, on in this tier set post, you had something that you wanted to highlight at the very top of this class armor set design stuff, right?
So the set bonuses, they're like intentionally... Yeah, you're good. The part you had was good. Yeah. Intentionally not as complex. They're not supposed to key in with the capstone talents or change what talent builds you're supposed to be using.
Yeah.
And they're not supposed to be super complex or rotationally impactful, but hopefully they will do set bonuses that do those things in the future. And I think that makes a lot of sense for this first set of set bonuses, right? To not immediately throw a wrench into their new system. That being said, my opinion of looking through these set bonuses is like 50% of them are so boring that I fell asleep reading them, and that is bad and shouldn't be. Like, again, you could read the Feral one. Yeah, they're just so, it's so unexciting that I think it is worse than I think there's room to make things that are slightly more interesting than this and still satisfy that design goal that they have.
Funnily enough, you and I were kind of talking about this offline. We're like, I'm surprised that they committed themselves into making tier set bonuses for the first tier, because it seems like, to me at least, that they didn't even necessarily need to make like very strong or even elaborate tier bonuses, and they didn't. And I think that it makes a lot of sense, because many classes are getting a massive change up in just functionally how they work due to the talent system shakeups. And I think it would have made sense if they didn't have class sets at the beginning. It also, I think, makes sense that they have, I don't call them boring, but like bland tier sets for most classes, and then that allows them to like ramp them up as the expansion progresses. I do wonder what they're going to do later on in the expansion, and I wonder how they're going to feel about like this part in particular, where
I think they should be changing that for going, like, in future builds, they should make ones that actually do change the build, like change the talent build,
where you're going to feel like you're going to be forced into specific capstone talents or specific builds for particular patches. Because I mean, that's kind of how tier sets have always been, is that they kind of push you towards a build and you end up playing specific builds due to tier sets. I don't think that's a new phenomenon.
I think that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good if the good talent builds change based on tier sets a little bit. Obviously not like one that just like super pushes one, but you know, if it changes which one's best by a few %, I think that's good.
All right. I think that's all the news we have for this week. It was a 20-minute video. I don't think we need to hold the people much longer. There's a lot of good stuff, a lot of very cool stuff, interesting decisions in regards to what Blizzard is bringing back. Again, if you want any of these posts, check down the description. You're going to be able to check them all out on Wowhead. Anything else for the people, Dratnos?
GN.
And we'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.